Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo Podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank. With Jeff Kolpack, I'm Dom Izzo. North Dakota State returns home this weekend for homecoming as the Bison will welcome in the Penguins from Youngstown State. Final appearance for Youngstown, at least for a few years, as they're being rotated off the schedule. Finally, somebody listened to me on that. The Bison and Youngstown have played every year, Kolpack, since 2008. NDSU's first game as a member of the Missouri Valley Football Conference was at Youngstown State. And for some godforsaken reason, they played every single year since then.
Why do you hate the Valley so bad, the schedule?
I would love to be in the room. Just let me be in the I can help but make the schedule. Just
NDSU is not the only program in the Valley.
I understand that, but this is the furthest trip. And they don't play other teams.
Something's got to give. Something's got to give somewhere.
Well, NDSU should be playing Northern Iowa every year. And Missouri State probably every year. Maybe that's not such a bad thing this year, but I digress from that. The Penguins come in a mark of 2-1. They beat the likes of Duquesne in their first game, a win over Pioneer Football League member Dayton in game 2, and then played Kentucky out of the SEC a week after the Wildcats won in Florida in Gainesville against the Gators and lost that game 31-0. What do we make of Doug Phillips in year 3 with the Penguins?
Two things. Number one, they've had a bye week, so they've had a week to prepare for NDSU. Now, does that really matter schematic-wise? Because NDSU hasn't changed. You can just take out the file and input game plan facing the Bison. It's a matchup problem for Youngstown over the years, and that's NDSU with anybody. They're not going to wow you with, they do some different alignments, and I don't know why Arizona was all, some of the media members, it was so unorthodox look. It's not an unorthodox look.
No.
It's not. It's a basic West Coast offense.
It's unorthodox to people that don't see it all the time, which is clearly Arizona did not.
What's your definition of unorthodox, I guess?
Yep.
But, they do some motions, and they put players in shifts and things like that in offense, but the look is not so different. I mean, it's just the way they've been doing it all these years. There's been some wrinkles, of course, and they ran some stuff against USD, a couple reverses, and they'll throw that in there.
Tried a flea flicker there as well that didn't pan out. So
was nowhere near open.
No, but they definitely were trying to spice things up a little bit for the conference opener. I want to get to the Bison here in a bit.
But that was one, okay? I need number two.
Go for it.
Okay, and number two, it's a program under Doug Phillips that is shunning the transfer portal happy look that Bo Pelini would take in almost anybody. I think he's trying, obviously brought in players, but they're trying to develop from within and the high school way. And I think he would love to model his program after NDSU.
I like him as a coach, and I talked about that in our preseason show, that I think they are the best contender to finish way higher than when they were picked in the preseason. I picked them 9th, and I could have easily gone back and maybe 6th, Kolpack, depending on, you look after this week where they have UND at home, then Indiana State, Western Illinois, South Dakota, Illinois State. There's a stretch of games that are highly winnable for them after they play this game with NDSU.
When Craig Bohl came here, he decided that what he's going to do is do this mix of players. And he goes, people are just bigger up in the Midwest. And we're going to take our tough guys, our farm tough guys, and we're going to mix it with some speed from other parts of the country. Well, he did find some speed in North Dakota, too. But that was the formula that he eventually developed, had a hiccup in 2009, but figured it out. And with Youngstown State, I think what you need to do is you got to take your toughness. It's a tough area of the country. Mm-hmm. We've been out there. Kids are not given anything. And so you have to develop your toughness, the right kids, within that area, that footprint, and then mix it in with speed from other parts of the country. I'm thinking that's what he's trying to do, is get the tough dudes from the Pittsburgh, Northeast Ohio footprint, and then get the right mix.
You know that area is just a ton of football players, but there's a ton of schools. Ohio itself, what did we do the count? Like at least 7 Division I programs. I mean, that is the home of the MAC, is the best way probably to say it. So Youngstown is going up against that, and that's the level of player they're trying to get that go to a MAC school like a Kent State or a Miami of Ohio. They're trying to get them to stay and go to Youngstown.
Youngstown is a school that would love that the Power 5 would break off.
Yeah.
because then they could jump into that next group of 5 and then put them on equal footing recruiting-wise with all the MAC schools. And you could make the argument that would be better facility-wise than a lot of the MAC schools with their indoor facility, where they did some renovations to Stambaugh Stadium. I would like to see more people go to the games.
Yeah, I'm sure Youngstown would as well.
Right. But I think they could, if they got into that next group of 5 like NDSU would like to, I think they could do okay.
It's still stunning to me. They have one playoff appearance in 16 years, and that was Bo's trip to the championship game where they lost to James Madison in the 2016 season. When I came here, NDSU got in the gateway. Then it was 2 years after. All we heard was Youngstown was still on the cusp, Jeff, of that unreal success they had in the 90s. That is so far gone now that there's a whole generation and a half that have gone through that. They have no idea of anything about. They see the banners up there, but that they can't connect to that. They weren't alive, frankly, for that.
Yeah, once you lose it, it's hard to get back. And a lot of programs and coaches will tell you that. Michigan got it back. The Big Blue lost it for a while. Yep, and got it back. Penn State lost it for a while and got it back. And I think they got it back. I mean, they're
humming along. They're a top 10 team.
Yep. They're pretty good.
Can Youngstown do that? Can they get it back? I guess is the question I'll ask you.
And this isn't an FCS world where there's 24 teams in the playoffs. The Valley's getting 5, 6 every year, and you can't get into that top 5, 6.
That's my point.
We're not talking top 2 or 3 in the Valley. Nope. You got to get in the upper half. That's all you have to do is get in the upper half. And just get in the upper half.
And they haven't been able to do that. Majority of the time, they have finished 6th or worse over the last 12 years, which is, I mean, you say that out loud, it's like, really? But they have been beaten out by the likes of Indiana State. Indiana State and Western Illinois have made the playoffs as often as Youngstown. I mean, say that out loud and have anybody believe that. You know what I mean? South Dakota has more playoff appearances than Youngstown State over the last few years. I mean, that to me is stunning for a prideful program that when you go back and watch that great Youngstown boys 30 for 30 that was done about, that was the heart of Youngstown football, man, in the early to mid-'90s. They were as good as Georgia Southern, if not better.
And you look at their facilities, you thought they would never go away.
Yep.
I mean, I wish everybody could get one trip to the Youngstown Stadium because it is
huge.
It's huge.
You could see almost most of Northeast Ohio at the top of that stadium. From our old spot in the press box.
It's got to be bigger than most MAC schools, I would think.
And
they built that to grow. They built it off the heels of the 90s success and thinking, okay, we're only going but up.
Yep.
And it just hasn't happened.
No, it has not. And that's the part that's really, really interesting. Yeah. The other playoff appearance they had, 2006, they made the semifinals that year and lost to App State. That was the middle of the App State run. After that, I mean, 1997, they beat McNeese for the championship. 94, they beat Boise for the championship. 93 was the Marshall win.
Yeah, and those are programs that are not. They were good in FCS and they're good in FBS. Although Boise,
Boise's
Boise is on its way down.
Downward now. You wrote about him, and I want to spend a couple minutes here before we talk about NDSU about Jaleel McLaughlin. This is NDSU had a hard time bringing down Travis Tice in the first half. Here's a different running back that if he gets by you, you're not going to get him. He's that fast, Kolpack.
The Bison run defense has not been impressive compared to what they have been. They held South Dakota to 46 yards rushing last week in the second half. So that was a good sign that they did some sort of adjustments, and they do have the ability to hold a back down and Tice is pretty good.
Yes.
They've held McLaughlin down. He hasn't got away from him.
Nope.
But again, those are against NDSU run defenses that were
pretty stout. Yep, there's no doubt about it.
This is a big test for that front seven on Saturday. Can they continue that second half performance that they had at USD? And can they continue to develop, I guess? I mean, you got some younger guys, and this is a program that prides itself on developing its talent. Can you develop it from week 2 to week 3 to week 4 and go on an upward trend here?
I had this stat sent to me, something we're going to mention during, I think, Bison game day, is the missed tackles per game. 2018 was 8. 2019, 8.5. 2021, 9.3. This year, 14.3 through the first 4 games. That's alarming and goes back to a trend that happened during the spring season where guys just couldn't wrap up, and you cannot afford that against a guy like this on Saturday with Jaleel McLaughlin.
He's number 9 all-time in NCAA rushing leaders, and he spent his first 2 seasons at Notre Dame College, a Division II, before transferring to Youngstown, taking advantage of that extra year, which now, as we see, career leaders are going to be skewed.
Yeah, the numbers are going to definitely look different here. Everything is. Michael Tussey's going to have a ton of games under his belt. That is going to, but it doesn't diminish, I don't think, what McLaughlin.
I'm just saying the top 10 it will be not fair to some of those guys who played 4 years. Now you got guys playing 5. But that being said, he's 5'9", about 188 pounds, really fast. You talked to the Bison players this week. Very fast, very quick. And it's going to be a testament of gang tackling because, missed tackles is one thing, but if you can slow them down and you're pursuing well, you can gang tackle and make up for it.
Going to be one of the big storylines we're going to follow in the game on Saturday. Another one is on the Bison offense. We talked about it in our video blog Monday. Noah Gindorff is not available for this game. His status going forward is completely up in the air for the 6th-year senior tight end who did not make the trip to USD. Joe Stuffle is going to get another start. He had a couple catches for 28 yards, a couple of big catches actually in that game against South Dakota. Before we get on the Stuffle angle here, I want to moderately put a bow on the Gindorff stuff because we still really don't know if or when he will play again this season.
It's not over, okay? I don't think it's over.
Okay.
I'm pretty confident of that. Now, do the Bison have to make the playoffs? I don't know. But, is it similar to an Eli Mostert thing? But it's not over, in my opinion. Now, I don't know exactly what's going on either.
Yeah, we have not been privy to that.
It's just the sense of
recurrence of the injury, and you can surmise whatever you want from that. I think there might be some out there that say, did the surgery, did it not heal? Something did not heal right.
My sense is, did he get another procedure done of some sort? That would be my guess. And because something's gone on here where he hasn't been with the team, so... And that's as much as we know, and I guess you can speculate all you want. And it's a podcast; we can speculate,
and we'll continue to dig.
I feel like he had something done, or else
It's a good point. Why you not there?
Yeah,
if otherwise,
you should go somewhere to have something done.
That's a good point. That's something I guess we'll continue to peck at and try to get as much information as we can on it. Joe Stuffle is 3 inches shorter, but we're talking about a highly decorated guy out of River Falls, Wisconsin. He had 15 offers. A majority of the MAC offered him out of high school. He's got the physical ability to be an impact guy. And you brought this up, and I thought it was well put on Monday. In late November, Thanksgiving last year, NDSU was of the mindset that Noah Gindorff and Josh Babich are moving on, that Joe Stuffle is going to be our guy in 2022.
I like Joe Stuffle. He went up and had a catch in traffic against South Dakota. I went, well, okay, that's pretty good. There's some ability there. Who knows? He may be a better receiver than Noah. He's a little smaller being in quotation
relative
marks.
Terms there.
But I don't know, is he a little faster? He could be. I don't know that for sure.
He's been on the kickoff return here a few times. He's
not slow.
No, he's been the up man there that he's returned the ball a few times.
And just because you're 6'3", not 6'6", Ben Ellison's 6'3" and playing in the NFL.
Worked out all right there.
Jim Klimsaucer was 6'2", had a pretty decent career in the NFL. You don't have to be Gronk to make it in Division I football and above.
Cam Miller and him were roommates their freshman year, so there is a natural camaraderie there, a relationship that Joe said, there's no issue there, that Cam and I are on the same page, and that's something to certainly watch and see how he's worked into the game plan, because I don't know the timing last week, Kolpack, if that's something the Bison coaching staff knew well ahead of time, but certainly this week there was no equivocation that Stuffle was going to be the guy, that they could work something in for him on Saturday.
And we can't forget that Hunter Lipke's also a tight end. You cannot.
No.
The best player in FCS is what you're calling him.
I am.
You cannot forget that he's a tight end.
Brosio
had a couple of good plays.
He did
in that area.
He had caught a pass and was laying guys out blocking wise. That they are not short of talent there. Just Gindorff is a special size ability that's. To have him out there that was a bonus, Kolpack, because right now the Bison wide receivers, I know Eric Peterson wrote about DJ Hart, who had a couple nice catches in the game. You're starting to see small steps out of the wide receivers because that's the tight ends have to be the guy because the wide receivers haven't fully established themselves.
And let's not discount that Braylon Henderson got open deep. He was open deep by a good couple steps. Cam's got to complete those passes. Now, Cam,
I want to ask you about Cam Miller. Where do you think so far through the first 4 games?
He's been good, but not great.
Okay.
He's what are his stats? 33 of 52. That's 64%. That's pretty good.
That's West Coast home run.
That's
there.
good.
Yep.
But he's missed a couple that he should. He missed one to Hunter in the end zone where it was late and deep on a pattern where Hunter got open. Missed one to Braylon. So he's been good, but not great.
Is it anything that you're seeing that's different from last? He's not been as sharp as he was at the end of last season. That's how I've evaluated so far.
I don't know. It's hard to say that when you're completing 64% of your passes. You can't say he's not sharp.
But they're missing out on plays that they could
There's
convert.
just been a play in here. Yep, a couple of game changer plays that he probably completed against Missouri State.
I'm glad you brought that up though about the deep ball to Braylon. So it's not because I hammered this over the last couple of weeks. So it's not the guys maybe can't get open. Now they did get open and couldn't complete the play.
Hey, look, the game plan against Arizona was to do power. That was their best way to beat him, and it was the appropriate game plan. They
nearly worked.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yep.
Now, I think you're going to see they open it up a little more against South Dakota. I'm guessing Youngstown's going to stack the box with their 4-3, and you may see it open up a little bit more against Youngstown. They did some funky things against South Dakota on 3-4 occasions. So I think you're going to see more of the playbook. Does that include going? You gotta stretch the field at some point,
right?
You can't go Hunter Lipke 20 times a game.
Well, and that's my point.
I guess you could.
And I know you got an email about this, about what I said during our pregame show about leaving Lipke in the garage. And had the Bison not turned the ball over 3 times in the first half, I think they would have, Jeff. You wouldn't have seen him run the ball 18 times on Saturday. And that's the thing I wonder as we go forward, how late this season goes, how many. You've seen Lipke not even play some games. Last year against Youngstown, he had 1 carry, scored a touchdown. We didn't see him again the rest of the game. Can you do that? Can you put him aside? Because you've got this unbelievable depth. We keep talking about a running back to save him for when you're going to know you're going to need him late in the year.
I think you're going to see out of Tamarick Williams the same thing you saw last year. And that is, as the season progresses, you're going to see more carries. More. But last year is because he didn't know the offense. Right, and he came in as a transfer, and it just takes time to develop your camaraderie with your fellow 10 players out on the field.
Where you got to go, right?
As the season progressed, and against Youngstown last year, late in the
year,
good. He was the guy.
Yep.
I think you're going to see that more this year, not because of the playbook, but because he had an off-season injury, and I think it's just a little slow coming back, and they want to take baby steps with him. At some point, instead of the toe in the water, they're going to throw him in. Now, is it this week? Maybe, maybe not. But at some point before middle of October, I would imagine that you're going to see Tamarick Williams and his 6'1", 222-pound frame, and he's fast, start unleashed a little bit. And that'll take some of the pressure off Hunter.
Matt Entz wasn't ready to go there at middle linebacker. Are you to pick a guy after what Luke Wirtz did on
I guess
Saturday?
not. I don't know. I don't watch film and evaluate.
I thought Entz said it, both Kubitz and Wirtz had their best games. So they're at least trending in the right way. But as we near the midpoint of the season, you'd like to think that there's going to be a guy picked sometime soon before maybe the Bison play at South Dakota State here in a few weeks.
And what in the God's name of an Achilles recovery is when Cole Wisniewski's going to play?
It's a good question. You asked
and
that.
When he does, where does he play? Does he play where Oscar and Ladarczyk are playing? Do they put him in the middle? You got Kaiser on the outside. Logan Cobb's developed as a really good backup to Kaiser.
That's a good question. It's a good problem to have. I would put him in the middle. He's played there. He's your best linebacker. I think healthy, he's your best linebacker.
So you put him right in there ahead of the 2 starters right now.
That might ruffle some feathers, but to me, I would do that. Or you put him on the outside with Wirtz or Kubitz still work in the middle and Kaiser on the other side. If you're asking me, that's where I would do it.
You've been this week, may I add, that you've been grasping at a couple straws anyway.
Have I?
Let's tell you your commentary, on girls' athletics. Why should we be surprised? Who's surprised at girls?
I still get plenty of emails about it.
Okay,
all the time.
I need to see some. I need to see the evidence.
I will tell you that right now. I get it on my show all the time. Why does WDAY give all this attention to girls athletics, to volleyball? It's all the time, man. I'm not kidding. That's why I did it.
This state has produced girls Division I talent going back to Angie Welly, for God's sake.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
So maybe you should take after the fans instead of
That's what I went at. It wasn't about. That's what I was aiming at directly.
Let me rephrase the question. Carry on.
That's what I was aiming it at. Was at the fans and viewers that ask, why do we give so much time to girls' sports?
My point is, why would you give credence to those fans? Because it's not true, and it's probably like 2 people. 3?
It's more than that. I brought out. I'll just say this: for the amount of television time that we have given to our state tournaments for the girls, I fight this still all the time. Like, they have earned it. The play is good. That's why I did it last night.
I don't know. I think you're making this up. This boogeyman in your mind.
It's not. I'm not making it up. I'll tell you that right now. Oh, God, you threw me off here. I got a whole list of things, and now you got me going on that.
You take a little criticism, and
it's not criticism. I welcome it. It's
you're
fine.
Off the rails.
I welcome it. I'm just telling you that I've received more than my fair share of people that say that. Well,
I'm in your kitchen.
Yeah. Couple of the other games this week at FCS.
Are we doing pick'ems?
We'll do that here in a second. I'm just interested now where we've seen some teams start to develop. We had another FCS over FBS win. We talked about what Sac State did. Are we ready to let them into the pantheon of the teams that are worthy of being considered?
Oh, good question. Almost.
They're not there for me. I'll answer that.
Okay.
They got to beat Montana.
To win a national title.
To be in the conversation, they got to get there. They're just like what you were talking about with Mo State last week. That's where I'm at with them. Mo State still hasn't got to win either, by the way, because they obviously lost to South Dakota State. Those 2 schools, before I'm ready to anoint them or give them in the conversation, you got to beat somebody. Yep. You got to beat somebody you're not supposed to beat. And that hasn't happened yet for either one of those schools. So we'll wait and see. Really impressive. And on the flip side, Kolpack, how bad is the football in the state of Colorado, where the Buffs are winless and the Rams are winless?
Northern Colorado's no great shakes either. Never has been.
Colorado, not in the Division I era, they have not been. No.
Kind of lost it after Court McGuffey left in the mid-'90s as when they won a national title at D2.
Man. By the way, game to watch, I believe this weekend. Let me get my schedule up here for Bison fans if they want. Saturday night, Colorado plays at Arizona. So there's the FBS team this year and the future one that are matching up in Tucson on Saturday night.
What I saw,
Arizona,
Colorado,
by the way, Arizona's an 18-point favorite, by the way. Holy cow!
How can Carl Durrell? He's the head coach of Colorado. If Scott Frost, Colorado just must not have the budget, because if Nebraska buys out Scott Frost 3 weeks before another $7.5 million they could save. How in the name is Carl Durrell keeping his job right now? I mean, how do you get that bad?
Well, they already put the statement out. They did that a couple weeks ago about we're determined to turn this around. That would make me think that his time is short.
Are almost feeling sorry for Colorado. A couple of weeks ago, they were beating them so bad.
How about the PJ's team, real quick before we do our FCS pick-up here?
The real thing.
I think so.
After the incredibly weak schedule, it showed me a lot last week.
Boat race Michigan State on the road, have Purdue at home this week. If there's a time that they're going to win it in the divisional format, because we believe that's probably going away after this year, this is it. This is it for them to get to the Big Ten championship game, and whoever will happen there, if it's likely Ohio State. Boy, this is the opportunity of all chances here for the Gophers in 2022.
And he's done it much the way NDSU built its program, and Youngstown State is hoping to, is they're pretty tough.
Yep.
I mean, they have a good ground game, and it's a physical ball.
It'll be fun to watch. We'll see what happens. Gophers host Purdue Saturday morning. That'll get things started here. Let's do some pick'em. There's a couple games I don't want to touch because they're doing our official pick'em at the end of Bison game day on Saturday. I will throw you one that we are going to pick. Richmond and Elon. Each team at 3-1. Elon beat William and Mary last week to get into the top 25. Are these two schools contenders in the CAA this year?
Both teams played their FBS opponent pretty tough. Both teams also had a very marginal win over an average or below FCS team. I look at Elon rallied from 28-10, I believe, last week against, well, you said the William and Mary Marys?
Tribe.
The Tribe.
I like your nickname better, but that's not it. It's the Tribe, yes.
I'm going with Elon because it's they got something going there now. They're the home team. They've beaten teams they haven't beaten in the past. I got the Phoenix.
All right. I'm leaning Richmond here. I think the Spiders will win on the road on Saturday. I think it's a close one. 27-24, 24-21, somewhere in that vicinity. I think that game will pan out on Saturday. We're going to be in Terre Haute next week. The Sycamores are at Northern Iowa. There's a place they have not won in a long time. Staggeringly, each of these teams only have one victory. Northern Iowa got healthy last week with Western. Does that continue on Saturday with Indiana State?
Yeah, UNI's lost to Indiana State just once since 2001.
Wow.
Beginning for UNI, a 4-game homestand. That's unbelievable, and that's unheard of in college football. 4 in a row at home. How does that happen?
Yeah. Well,
it must be the bye week and some non-conference opponent there. I think UNI, how can you go into the trend against Indiana State? You can't.
Yeah, they're going to win that game. And like you mentioned, the start of a stretch here where they can potentially get healthy and, just like Northern Iowa always does, raise themselves from the ashes and get them into playoff contention. It is a sellout in Normal this weekend. Saturday night, it is a sellout. I was told that earlier today. The Redbirds welcoming in Southern Illinois. This is a rivalry game. SIU off a big win over UND last week.
What is it, $2 beer night or what?
It's Hall of Fame weekend. Boomer Grigsby is being honored for going into the National Collegiate Hall of Fame this year.
Yeah, the jury's out on Illinois State. Beat Valpo 28-21, and Valpo lost to Indiana Wesleyan.
By the way.
Or barely beat Indiana Wesleyan.
I got the email. Redbird
They got pounded by Dartmouth.
Announces sellout of reserve general admission seats versus SIU. So big game there.
Illinois State just hasn't won a big game. It's
been a while.
Who did they beat in 19 when they made the playoffs? Illinois State. They beat South Dakota State on the road. Yep. South Dakota State was a top 5 team at the time. But since then, I just haven't gotten the vibe. Now, is the transfer quarterback from Minnesota, Anixted?
Yep.
Zach Anixted.
Yep.
Is he the guy? I don't know yet. The schedule just doesn't tell me enough. I think SIU's hot. I'm staying with them.
I tend to agree with you there. I think SIU will win this game. You're dead on about Illinois State. We're going to see the Redbirds at the end of October. Just where are they? And I'll go back to this and probably get closer when we talk about Illinois State. What about Brock Spack? It's a new AD there and a new president. Spack's been there a long time, over double digits now. What's the lifespan on Brock Spack there?
At some point, you got to produce. And I think
the same thing, by the way, in Vermilion.
I think he needs to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the same thing in Vermilion, too, with Bob Nielsen.
Yeah, I don't think USD administration is going to be too patient either after all the money they've invested.
And they're not going the right way, Kolpack. We saw that. They have the bye this week to the Coyotes, and then they play the Jacks, and that's probably not going to go so well in Brookings in a couple weeks. Final game here before we wrap up is the biggie in Grand Forks. Missouri State at North Dakota on Saturday. Each team off a loss. Fighting Hawks, I thought, looked slow and just got run over by SIU last week.
Yeah, I don't know about UND. It just looks like a bunch of average to me. You know, nothing's too bad or horrible, but nothing's really great either. They lost their great running back last year. Isaiah Smith's been okay, but he got held down. O-line, after a good performance against Nebraska, which now you have to throw into question a little bit. You have to wonder if they're just okay. Defense is okay. Everything's just sort of okay.
Yeah.
Missouri State has more dynamic weapons. And I should take that back. Belquist has been really good.
Okay. Yep.
He's been the one guy, and so you got one player who's been pretty dynamic. But Missouri State has more of those guys. They have a better quarterback. And this is a game where the Bears, if they lose,
I'm right there with you.
Things could go wrong in a hurry.
Well, then whoever loses this game is going to have 3 losses. So you can only afford to lose one more time. And for the breadth of the schedule, the Fighting Hawks still have to play both South Dakota State and North Dakota State. Most State doesn't play the Bison, which is a huge advantage to them. They still have to play Southern Illinois, which has given them issues over the last few years. So loser of this game and if it's Most State, you're 0-2 to your point in the Valley.
And it's a team with a bunch of transfers, and those teams you can derail in a hurry. You're not as invested in the program, and that's all fine and dandy when you're winning. But when things go the other way, it's just harder to stay invested.
Yeah,
Usually.
That's going to be fascinating to see how this pans out. But real quick, before we go, one of my favorite events is tomorrow. So for the people listening, on Friday is the Bison Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which is a really interesting class that's going in this coming weekend. Jerry Rosberg, former Bison player from 74 to 77, Super Bowl champion with the Baltimore Ravens. Now he's Nathaniel Hackett's special to the head coach is what he's doing now with the Denver Broncos. Brad Cervais is going in, along with Marcus Johnson, who we're going to have on our pregame show on Saturday. I love this event. Lynn Dorn, the longtime athletic director on the women's side, being honored as well.
Yeah, let's stop right there. I don't think it's, it's Lynn Dorn and honoring her career, but I think it's really about honoring women's athletics and the strides that we've seen over the years. So that to me is a huge induction. I'm going to do something on that tomorrow. I did my game day stories on Marcus Johnson and two sport athletes that were
kind of the last of the breed of that, right?
Absolutely. Jared Essler and Alan Burrell and Marcus Johnson really were the last. There's been some dabblings, like Dexter Werner threw the javelin, picked it up in conference. I don't know.
Yeah, after his Bison basketball career was done. Yep.
But not a true. Do you want the quintessential and ultimate two-sport athlete in Bison history? And this is just my own opinion. Arden Beachy. He was the starting quarterback for the football team, obviously, and he did the decathlon in track and field.
I did not know that.
So
what
do you think of those two combinations?
That's crazy. That's an amazing athlete is what it is. Decathletes alone are phenomenal.
Just do
athletes.
That all year round.
That's outrageous. To your point on Lynn, and you covered this, you saw this firsthand, that women's basketball really wasn't a thing in many places. It certainly was, just in my history of reading of what it was in Fargo, and that she was at the forefront of that, made it a big deal.
Yeah, she hired this kid out of Purdue, Amy Ruley, just shows up, and it's like, oh, you're the head coach? And the rest is history.
Worked out pretty well there. So that's going on tomorrow, and of course we'll feature Marcus coming up on our show on Saturday. We got to roll. Don't forget, Bison Game Day live Saturday morning, 10 a.m. on WDAY. Jeff will join myself, Kyle Emanuel, and Logan Campbell. And then our kickoff show at 12:50. Note the earlier start time with kickoff just after 1 that you'll see on WDAY between Youngstown State and North Dakota State. For Jeff Kolpack, I'm Dom Izzo. Thanks for listening, everybody, to the latest Kolpack and Izzo podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank.